So a lot of names, very famous women in the world of the first computer, but all forgotten. And I had the opportunity to read the article. There is the New York Times magazine of a few weeks ago, and the title of the article was like that. It was about the secret history of women in coding, about how computer programming once had a far better gender balance than today, and what went wrong. So if you look at the 40s and 50s, I mean, coding at that time was very much writing very small codes, no more than 4,000 words, because the computer had very small memory, typing them, printing them into punch cards, and then testing them, and every time you had to do it again. And at that time, it was a woman's job. There were only women that were doing all that coding and the punch cards. And it was women because it was a very precise, very meticulous work, and it was at that time felt that women were the best to do that. And it was really, the ladies there were even called the computer ladies, or you had the computer girls. So it was very much, computing was very much a woman task, and you had almost no men at the time. It was not very well-paid job, it was not very famous job, but it was for women because it was thought that the mathematics and the conciseness and the meticulous of women were best suited for programming. During the war, it was very much women that were taken by the military to crack the codes. In Britain, a lot of women were coding and trying to crack the code of the transmission. In the US, the same. You had quite a lot of women there. And men were busy with the hardware. Men were busy with the machine. It was much fun to work on the big computer, on the machinery part, and not on the software. Software was not for men. Software was something for women. And you see that has evolved, and I can bring a lot of examples, but I try to keep it short. But up to the 80s, everything which was around mathematics, around invention, around coding, and you have seen many of there, was about women, and not so much about men. You had, in the mathematics studies, you had about more than 40% of people in mathematics and computer science at that time were women. It was quite exceptional. In the 80s, everything changes. And why? Because of the personal computer. I didn't know that, to be honest. I found it quite interesting to read. The day the personal computer came up, in 84, it was the day that everything changed. And why? Because of education and because of parents. Because the first personal computer were given by the parents to the boys. And it was about a bit gaming, it was about trying fun, having fun with computers. And from that date, the boys had the opportunity to learn a lot how to deal with computer. And at the time that you then engaged in studies, they had a big advantage versus women that didn't receive all that education from home. And at that time, the whole world of coding became a young, white, male stereotype. And the women couldn't get there because they had a drawback, because they were not able to have all these training on the personal computer at the time. And that's really the moment where, is from 85, women didn't get anymore into the computer science, and you saw the figures going backwards up to, I think, 2010, if the figures are correct, where there was less than 15% of women in the mathematics and computer science in the US, from more than 40 in the early 60s, 70s, or up to the 80s, down to 17 in 2010. And since then, it has increased again as from 2012, but only very, very gradually. So for me, one of the messages I want to give here is that education is really key, because it's very often ourselves don't even realize it by the way we educate our children, by the way our education system is set up, that we will favor gender balance or gender inequality. So very important to know that. And today, I mean, I will not repeat because Isabella has said a lot. I mean, there are not enough women in the ICT. I have also a few figures here. I think they are relatively similar to the one that you have said. On 8 million people in Europe that are working in the digital technology, only 17% are women. If you see in ICT entrepreneur, that are women, I have here figures of 19% at European level. In the entrepreneur, a bit higher than the one you have. So depending probably on the source we have, but still it's always lower than the 20%. So it remains very, very low figures. If I look at Proximus, where we try to favor gender diversity, if I take the whole department technology, so where you manage network and IT, only 14% are women. Really bad figures. If I take the ICT, the IT part is 20. And if I take the cybersecurity, which you would say is probably even lower, no, there it's 33. Why? Because we have done a lot of internal training, I think, for cybersecurity, and there we have been able to form people from the same level of expertise, main expertise of technology, into the cybersecurity. And I think the fact that we have done a lot of in-house learning, in-house certification has helped us to get more women in there. So again, it's not because of capabilities of women, it's very much because of the education, the platform we give women to enter into those ICT functions. So still a lot of work to do at Proximus, I confess. We're getting better in gender balance, but not so much in the ICT and tech department. In studies, it's the same. If you see a few figures in the studies, you only around 1 in 6 ICT specialist studies is a woman, only 1 in 3 STEM graduates are women. I speak also on European figures. So we need to have more women in the STEM, and I know probably the minister will talk about that, because that's really something we need to make sure that we can stimulate. There is absolutely no reason why women wouldn't engage in STEM studies. I mean, they have the same capabilities, there are lots of jobs, and those jobs are very nice jobs, and everybody could do them. So very important for us to close the gap, to make sure that the culture in education, but also the culture in companies changes. If I take as an example what I did at Proximus, when I started as CEO of the company back in January 2014, I mean, the company was very masculine. It was a very hierarchical company with very male stereotype, a very silo, a lot of competition between the teams. I tried really, when I started, the first thing I did was nothing about gender balance, it was about culture. How can you change the culture of the company to get to a company that is more inclusive, that is more feminine, that has values like collaboration, like feedback, like transparency, openness, not driven by KPIs where you are green or red, but try to be driven by objectives that you can fill in differently and where you have more freedom. And it takes time to change the culture of a company. I think we are now 5 years down the road. I think we have changed. Have we fully changed? No, there are still a lot of stuff to do, and there are some departments where we have changed more than departments like the technology department, which is harder to change, where there is still a bit more stereotypes. And so this is one example, but I think if we want to have more gender balance in ICT, we need to have different education and different culture in companies, and we need some role models. And I think that's why I think here there are a lot of ladies as well that have an important role in ICT. And I think it's very important. Women very often are not that secure, are a bit more humble and a bit more insecure than men when they start their career. Having more role model to say it is possible, you can run company, you can be in ICT, you can be successful, will really help girls and younger women to take on the ICT study. Bon, I see my time is up. I know Isabella has taken a lot of time. There is one message I still want to give. One message on AI. I mean, what you see now, one of the latest development in technology is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is based on algorithms, where algorithms learn from the stimuli they receive from the market or from images they get. One of the biggest risks I think we are facing in the digital society is that algorithms today are made by men, for men, and that the whole better balance that we have created in society today will disappear in society tomorrow if we don't have enough people that drive the algorithm, that program the algorithm, that are also women or not white male, because it's also the same on ethnics. So for me, that's a very big danger we should all be aware of. We see today that, for instance, in search of executive search or job search, there is already bias for some high-paid job that the algorithm will look for profiles that are more male than women, because you know we write CVs in a different way. If you are a woman, if you are a man, you put different words, different things in your CV. And if the algorithm are fed by looking at more the male stereotypes and the male characteristic, you will have more males that will pump up from the search and that will be enabled to get jobs in the ICT sector, and very often that will perpetuate themselves. So that's one example, which for me is very shocking. You have other examples in the health sector. If you see on the health feed of Apple, the tracking, it took Apple 5 years to introduce into the health tracking the fact that for women, you probably had menstruation that could have some effect on your health tracking. 5 years. Which is quite obvious, to be honest, if you are a young woman, that the way you behave, your temperature, your mood, your whatever, your energy level is influenced by menstruation. People didn't think of that. It takes 5 years to put in there in the tracking. Few examples, and I can bring way more, but I will stop because I will get kicked off from here. So my main message, and I will close with that, I think there are, for me, we are in an important moment. We need to be aware that there are risks coming, that a lot that we have been able to achieve so far is again at risk in the new digital world. I think we need to speak up. We need to be aware of that. We need to have more women engaged in ICT and mainly into AI. And the way we will get there, it's all about education and it's all about culture. And it starts with ourselves, the way we behave and we put culture in enterprises, but also the way we behave and we raise our children. So I'm very hopeful that with awareness, we will create changes, and that if we come back here in 10 years' time, we'll have a very different talk and different statistics. I really hope so, and I wish you a very nice day. Thank you.